Hello, I'm Lucy Crichton, and this is my 10-minute talk that go with my slides for EFL talks organised by Rob Howard. So I'm going to be talking about teaching children, and if we look at the first slide, this is a study taken from a book that I like very much. It's called Between Form and Freedom, and it's written by a woman called Betty Staley, and she has organised, if you like, the 3 7-year cycles of childhood, because childhood is from 0 to 21, and this is how she has organised it. So from 0 to 7, the child thinks through doing and learns through imitation. This is so interesting. If we look at the picture next to it, you can see how imitation is an incredibly intrinsic part of learning in the first 7 years. If we move over to the next 7 years, from 7 to 14, you'll see that the child thinks through pictures and learns through feelings. This is very interesting too, because you can see that actual sort of deeper cognitive learning doesn't actually come into play until the third 7 years, from 14 to 21. So you can see how important it is for us to understand childhood development, not just cognitively, but physically and spiritually too. For example, there's no point in teaching a 7 and 8-year-old about the solar system, for example, if they don't really know how far it is from their house to their school. So we should always question what we're teaching them. Is it part of their developmental stage? Is it something they're going to benefit from? Is it something they're going to deeply understand? Okay, moving on to slide 2. This is a picture, a photograph that you'll see of a storytelling session happening in my little school. And you will see that there are children from first grade, second grade, and there are even some 10 and 11-year-olds sitting there at the back. And I think what you can see in this photograph is how enjoyable storytelling can be, especially if you have something visual for your students to help them understand the narrative and the storyline. You can see how involved they are, especially if there's something funny in the story. So storytelling, if you're working with young children in the primary classroom, is one of your best tools. Okay, let's look at slide 3. Now, a lot of research and a lot of things have been written for many years, and particularly recently, about the importance of outdoor play for children. Not all schools have a space where their children can play that's connected to nature. Not all schools have grass. Some schools in inner cities are just concrete and 4 walls and cold floors. So knowing how important it is for children to take off their shoes and socks and get into nature, if that's not possible, there are ways that you can bring nature into your classroom. For example, if you bring a bucket of sand into the classroom where the children can put their hands into it or their feet into it, if you bring some beans in a cup where they can stick their fingers in it, if you bring a small plant and put it on your desk, get children to observe it, get children to smell it, touch it with their hands. Have a project in your classroom where they can grow a bean, for example, very simple thing, so that they can see how things grow and how nature is. If you're lucky enough to have a green space like I have, you'll see that we have a vegetable patch where children grow vegetables and grow different herbs and different kinds of tea. And not just for growing, but for actually picking and eating. We make green juice, we make tea, we use the spinach to make spinach omelettes. So we are not only teaching how to work in gardens and how to plant, but we're also incentivizing excellent eating habits. And it's so lovely to do it through English. In the next slide, you'll see that we can use English to teach meaningful life skills. When we're teaching our students something that's real and palpable, they're much more likely to remember it. Simple things like things I learnt at school myself, how to tie a tie, how to fold a big tablecloth. That can be quite a complex thing for small children, to putting the corners together, working with each other to fold a simple cloth. But it's a life skill. Getting the children, the teenagers as well, getting them to know how to use an iron to iron a shirt, teaching them how to clean a toilet, for example. Boys and girls. In the little picture in the bottom left, you'll see some boys drying up the dishes, and I said to those boys, I said, boys, you're going to be wonderful, wonderful housekeepers and fantastic husbands and great dads, because you know how to do stuff in the house. You know, it's something so simple, and they love it. You can see by their faces that they're enjoying what they're doing. In the next slide, you'll see teach children to like reading and have the courage to say no to electronics at break time. You know, children are bombarded all the time by electronics and computers and computer games, and it's up to the adults, you know, to give them ways to do different things and to stop necessarily, you know, not using technology all the time, but, you know, to also incentivize a book. Take a book in your hand, smell the pages, turn the pages over, show the illustrations to a friend. You can see when we are clear with what we think as educators is going to be beneficial for young children, if we're clear and we put down the rules and limits, they're quite happy. You know, they're quite happy to do different things and not just be on their phones all the time. Many a time I've been in the playground and I've collected up all the electronic equipment and I've held on to it 15-20 minutes, and suddenly they're all playing volleyball together, or they're all chatting, or they're all skipping, you know. So I don't think we should be frightened of laying down some rules about when it's adequate to use technology, right? Think about how your students see you if you are a teacher of children, you know. You need to have the right clothes, you need to have the right gestures, you know, a lot of makeup, a lot of dangly earrings, high-heeled shoes. You know, there are a lot of clothing that is really inappropriate for the classroom, right? Because we're role models for our students, and we need to be as decent as possible in the classroom, right? And if we're working with children, we need to know how to sit on the floor, take off our shoes. Yeah, that's the young child's realm is on the floor too. So we have to be and do what we expect them to do too. Okay. In this next slide, you'll see this is very interesting about heart cells and neurons. Our hearts house our thoughts, so everything we do and everything we see and everything we say in the classroom is mirrored by our students. It's a huge, huge responsibility to teach children in the 21st century. So be prepared, read up as much as you can, and do everything if you can possibly do it with as much love as possible. Think about how you act around the students you teach. If you're on time, if you come to class organised, if you live a healthy life, if you have good principles. Simple things like, you know, greeting colleagues, please, thank you, excuse me. You know, all those little tiny details will be mirrored by your students. So it's really important that you take a look at yourself and what you're doing. Okay? Think about your classroom environment. Think about what you can do to improve it. Is it too busy or is it too stark? What can you do with the tables and chairs in your classroom to make something different? If it's possible, change the seating arrangement. Get everybody sitting on the floor, or get people sitting back to back or in a circle or in a horseshoe. It's amazing with just a tiny detail of changing the classroom layout can mean that your class is completely different that day. And finally, remember, as I said before, it's a huge responsibility. We are the agents of change. If we want our society to be a decent society, if we want to teach our students to be good thinkers, to be empathetic to each other, to be seekers of not only knowledge, but of working together with other people and helping each other and having kind words and kind gestures. Yeah? That sort of education starts with the teacher too, and so we need to be the best we can. So thank you very much for listening to me and looking at my slides. Thank you also to Rob, and I hope that you enjoy your teaching. Thank you.